Hello, sports fans! It's Friday, December 27th. Welcome to Cleats by Dre. I'm Dre. Let's talk some sports. Hey everybody, hope you're having the best holiday season possible. This is my last episode of 2024. Next time I talk to you will be 2025. Can't believe it. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to get into some more college football. We're going to talk about Notre Dame. We're going to talk about, I can't believe it's almost been a week since that Notre Dame-Indiana game. I'm going to make a wild claim about the state of college football and the college football playoffs that I don't hear talked about enough, and I back it up with data. We'll preview the Sugar Bowl next Wednesday night, 8:45 Eastern, Notre Dame versus Georgia. We'll do all that. But first, we got to acknowledge a legend that passed. And the legend is Rickey Henderson. Passed too soon, right? A few days shy of his 66th birthday. Rickey Henderson, the last great leadoff hitter. Rickey grew up in Oakland, California, made much of his career in Oakland, California for the A's. Maybe it's right in a sick kind of way. He passes away when baseball in Oakland passes away, as the A's are now in Sacramento. Let's just break down Rickey's career. So 3,055 hits, 27th all time. But where he really was exceptional was runs, walks, and stolen bases. 2,295 runs scored is first all-time. 2,190 walks is second all-time. 1,406 stolen bases is first all-time. 468 ahead of number 2, Lou Brock. I think the stat is someone would need to steal 60 bases for 22 straight seasons to pass Rickey. And his value actually grew with advanced analytics. I was reading up on his time with the Yankees. One of his best seasons was 85, when Mattingly won the MVP. Largely because he drove in over 140 runs, many of which was Rickey. Rickey finished third in the MVP race, I think behind Mattingly and George Brett. But the WAR, wins above replacement, Rickey was close to a 10, Mattingly was 6.5. So his career has aged well with analytics. And my favorite stat, wins above replacement, he's 14th all time among hitters. 111 wins above replacement. I think 2 weeks ago when we did the Juan Soto podcast and we had Fangraphs projecting out Juan Soto's career, I don't think Soto was reaching 111. He might have. It all depends. I mean, Rickey played a long time, but most of his WAR was in his first half of his career. But what's amazing about that number 14 in WAR, only two other players are ahead of him that played in the last 40 years, and that's Bonds and A-Rod. Rickey was incredible. He's the ultimate mole of a leadoff hitter. You're talking about walks, hits, runs scored, stolen bases with some power too. Whether it was with the A's and the Yankees and the A's again, he eventually bounced around a lot. But that 15-year stretch from 1979 to 1994, he's arguably the best player in baseball across that time frame. Happy to have those that were following baseball closely debate that with me. But I think Rickey took it up to Bonds, and it's just speaking to how strong of a player he was, and just the mold of a leadoff hitter, which I'll talk more about. And the reason I call it the last great leadoff hitter, I think there's a couple things going on here. One, I think the greatest athletes coming out of American high schools these days, they're playing football and basketball, right? They're playing the most popular sports. That's why it matters. It matters all those, media rights deals I talk about and viewership numbers, because that's what the kids emulate. Rickey himself was an All-American running back in high school with 2 1,000-yard rushing seasons, right? The combination of power, speed, vision. His mother actually counseled him to baseball, as football players had shorter careers. His mom's right, but remember, back in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, football did not have the boom it has now. Baseball was king. You just have to look at recent examples like Kyler Murray, right? Coming out of A&M, he could have played for those A's, drafted in the top 10 picks. He chose to go with football. I know he was a quarterback, but you don't see guys with Rickey's power, vision, speed choosing baseball. And then number two, the landscape of baseball has changed, right? All the guys learning the launch angle. If Rickey was coming up today as an MLB prospect, maybe he's stealing bases the way he does now because, speed of play rules have made the stolen base relevant again to levels that it was in the 1970s. But Rickey's likely swinging for the fences more. He's likely not hitting as many singles or trying to get on base. His profile is probably more of a masher. And if you look at the triple slash lines, batting average, on base, and slugging, in 1979, MLB average was 265 for batting average, 330 for on base, 397 for slug. In 2024, the MLB slash, much lower in average, 243 compared to 265. Much lower in on base, 312 compared to 330. But slugging still up there, 399. Now look, pitching's gotten a lot better, more specialized. We've talked about that. But the slug is still at the level. So it's almost like hitters are saying, screw it. I can't keep up with you pitch to pitch. But if I get a hold of one, I'm going to get a hold of one. So, what would you see from Rickey coming up? Maybe Rickey these days, maybe he's Mookie Betts, who's a fantastic player. Who, he maybe has had more pop than Rickey. Maybe it's more the Bobby Witt. It's the, Jazz Chisholm, guys that swing for the fences, whereas, back then, Rickey was a table setter. He was valued at that. And I struggled personally with this. I miss the table setter role. Teams more and more, bad guys lead off like Francisco Lindor, Kyle Schwarber, Shohei Ohtani. I get it. You want your best hitters hitting first, no matter their profile. I was a table setter myself when I played, right? My game was speed and not much else. Maybe a little bit of contact. It was speed. Personally, my play when I was leading off, and I played up to high school varsity ball. My play as a righty, ground ball between short and third, automatic hit. I just knew it. And that got the team going. When I lead off and, rip a single opposite field, extra pop, right, that the team, kind of hear from the bench, starting the game. You feel a responsibility hitting first. You set the tone. You get the first look at the pitcher. That used to be a role, table setter, and it's gone. It's gone from the game. Where would I hit now? I hit ninth now. The game's evolved. Analytics has had a lot to do with it. But man, don't you miss the roles? You miss the table setter. You miss the guys that would, move guys over. You miss the fielding first players. So it's just a changing game. And I almost want to do a full pod just on the positions and the types and styles. But let's give kudos and flowers to Rickey, right? Gone too soon. A lovable character, which I haven't even mentioned, right? Maybe not as lovable when he was with the Mets. Whatever happened during the playoffs when him and Bonilla were in the locker room playing poker, whatever it is. An incredible career, right? An endless treasure trove of, let's call it Chuck Norris level quotes attributed to him, right? You've probably heard them all. I'll give you one of my favorites that you've probably heard, maybe one you haven't. So, someone once quoted John 3:16, the Bible phrase to Rickey. He said, Rickey don't want to hear about John hitting 3:16. Rickey's hitting 3:30. And maybe this is one you haven't heard. When he was with the Yankees in the mid-1980s, Henderson told teammates that his condo had such a great view, he could see the entire state building. It's not the Empire State Building. He could see the entire state building. So baseball, known for its quotable goofballs and quotable personalities more than any other sport. Rickey was that. And I don't know. I don't have the history that some people do with baseball. But I would say if he's not in the all-time starting nine across MLB history, and some people would have him there, leading off in left field, he's definitely on the 26-man roster. And so, a legend when so much of baseball's legends were written in the first half of the 20th century, he stands out as a legend. So, too bad Rickey's gone. Let's remember him. Hopefully, we see more and more players like him. Speed, power, vision. All right, let's get a little deeper into Notre Dame and some college football. All right, let's talk about Notre Dame last week. Let's talk about college football in general. Let's talk about Notre Dame next week. So, my podcast came out last Friday. Later that night, Notre Dame had the game against Indiana. Fun one, electric stadium atmosphere. Final score 27-17 Irish. You all know it was 27-3 for much of the game. That final score was not as close as the actual score was. But I'll admit, I was getting nervous, especially with the ease with which they recovered the first onside kick. But no more needs to be said, except, what a great win. How nice to see Notre Dame on that side of the win. How much have we seen them on the other side where the talent levels didn't match up? So we had to enjoy that. And look, I got to give myself some plaudits, right? I got to give myself some props. What were two of the key factors I said? I said explosive run plays. And there goes Jeremiah Love. He could keep running, flu symptoms and all. He could keep running past that Indiana defense that, God, the safeties took the wrong angles. That I don't think Georgia safeties would take those kind of angles. But a 98-yard run, do I need to prove any more that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to the differences in the game? That, explosive run plays was a difference. And number two difference, you saw it on the line of scrimmage. It was a 4-star versus 3-star game. Notre Dame had all the 4 stars on the offensive line and defensive line. Indiana had the 3 stars. And it just looked like the push was in Notre Dame's favor. Despite Indiana thinking their defense held up and Notre Dame's offense maybe didn't really execute as well as it could consistently, it just felt like a difference. Just a complete difference in quality between the two teams. Some quick other stars I'll give. Huge to see Jordan Faison, the wide receiver, look electric, look a difference maker. 6 catches, 89 yards. He was our best receiver last year, especially towards the end of the year. Good to see him just out there again, maybe finally healthy after injuries at the start of the year. Would love to see that. And then Xavier Watts. He's been an incredible 2-year run. The instincts on that interception in a key moment in the red zone, just anticipation. That stuff will play at the next level too. But Watts is a cornerstone for us in the back there. And look, it feels like a cultural moment. Culture, yeah, for Notre Dame. And maybe I've been watching too much Here Comes the Irish on Peacock, which is a really good documentary, really good behind the scenes. I'm enjoying it. I have like half an episode left to where they are. And by the way, I think that's the type of stuff. That's the Rudy for our generation, right? Rudy was a big marketing vehicle for Notre Dame in the early 90s because back then, everyone was consuming movies. Movies were king. Well, today, streaming is king, and documentary style is king. I really think, especially if Notre Dame pairs it with a run here, a lot of, younger generation will look back, hey, I got to know about Notre Dame through Here Come the Irish and know about Marcus Freeman. But it's a culture moment here, and I'll say it where, look at the transfer portal. All the Irish defections, I believe, were earlier in the year. And I think it's just incredible compared to some other teams that have lost, 9, 10, 11, 12 guys already. No one's transferred. How have none of these wide receivers transferred? All in all, we have depth in the wide receiver position. And no one stood out. And a guy like Deion Colsey, who hasn't played much, hasn't transferred. Steve Angeli, the backup quarterback, hasn't transferred, like Penn State's quarterback. And maybe Angeli thinks he's in play for a starting role next year, but a guy like Tosh Baker, a 5th-year senior offensive lineman that didn't win, a position battle earlier in the year, You saw in the post-game locker room, he was the guy flipping, Freeman said, hey, Tosh, come do it. Flip down the first round marker to the second down marker. Freeman's got these guys bought in, and there's a culture, and with culture comes a confidence that the Irish are in any game they play, and they're actually ahead in most games they play. And maybe we come back to that point when we talk about Georgia some more, but overall, just a really good feel-good win. Some injuries that we'll talk about too that you maybe didn't want to see, but just an all-around just great feeling game for the Irish that we've had too much tension around us. Real happy for the team they were able to get that win. All right, here comes my wild proclamation, and I challenge everyone. I'm going to take stock of the college football playoffs before we preview Sugar Bowl, Notre Dame, and Georgia. I believe, and now we're at the Final Eight, this is the most wide open tournament in the history of organized sports. The most wide open tournament. Playoffs, Elite Eight, whatever you want to call it, any sport. This is wide open. And look, we'll use betting odds. We'll use the handicappers to say it. But looking ahead, if you looked at DraftKings, there are 6 teams in this Final Eight that are priced between plus 320 and plus 600 to win it all. Now, for those that aren't paying attention to the books as much, think of it as plus 320 implies a 24% chance to win it all. Plus 600 is a 14% chance. So there's 6 teams, and we'll count them off. It's Texas, Ohio State, in no particular order, but Texas and Ohio State I think are the first 2. Oregon, Georgia, Penn State, and Notre Dame. Notre Dame's actually at plus 600. 6 teams with 8 to go. No one knows who's going to win this thing. Doesn't that make for incredible drama? Shouldn't these next rounds just be incredible? And it's not because of, hey, there might be incredible upset. Sure, that's always fun. But you go to these games not really knowing who's going to win. That doesn't happen as much as it's about to happen. This is the most wide open tournament in the history of sports. And I'll challenge you to find examples. What I did, I tried to find examples. So I came across this website, sportsoddshistory.com. Feel free to use it. You could look up what the futures odds were for any given sport in any given year. My criteria was I wanted to look whenever a sport got down to its final 8, has a team with the 6 best odds been at plus 600 or less, 14% or less. That's my criteria. So some of the examples I came up with, nothing met that mark. Some close ones, right? In college basketball, some ChatGPT assisted search gave me the 2019 March Madness when UVA won it all. In the Elite Eight, you had Duke, UVA, Gonzaga, Michigan State, and Kentucky, anywhere from plus 315 to plus 825. That's 5 teams. That's still up plus 825. A sport that's kind of ripe for this kind of stuff, the World Cup in soccer. Sometimes you don't really know, maybe soccer could have some random results. The 2014 World Cup was similar in Brazil. You had Brazil, Germany, Argentina, Netherlands, and France, all between plus 275 and plus 750. That's 5 teams. Germany eventually won it, right? Over Argentina. You could, if you wanted to, look back to last year in college football when Michigan won, because we went to week 13. So this is before conference championship games. Georgia was actually the odds-on favorite before they lost to Alabama. But you go Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State before they lost to Michigan, Alabama and Oregon. Alabama and Oregon were at plus 700 each. That's 5 teams. Hockey's a good one. And I don't follow hockey as closely, but I know some of the playoffs can get, a little random, a little close, break of the puck. 2011 Stanley Cup playoffs and 2019 Stanley Cup playoffs. The 6th team gets up to plus 700. Not quite plus 600, plus 700. And then you probably think of baseball, right? Baseball maybe a little more random. The best I could do, and I didn't do a thorough search, but I thought of the 2003 MLB playoffs. The Marlins actually won it, and they weren't in the top 6 most best priced teams. You had the Yankees from plus 250, then Atlanta, the Giants, the Red Sox, the A's, and the Cubs at plus 700. That Cubs number plummeted, or I guess rose up after the Bartman plays. Sorry, Cubs fans. But that's still 6 teams up to plus 700. So we are looking here, I said it, 6 teams up to that 14%. And maybe that's, and maybe there's a combination of things where college football has never had this kind of playoff that, sure, so many teams have a chance. There's so much equity. But also in college football, we're in an era with Nick Saban's retired. Dabo and Clemson have fallen off a bit. You're without that traditional power, and it's wide open. And that's incredible. Because, we can obviously go with examples when underdogs have won, right? And, incredible upset, Giants over the Patriots, whatever it may be, Villanova in college basketball in the 80s. But, there's something about having a lot of good teams where it's not an upset, but you also don't know who's going to win going into any given game. Because also when you have that upset scenario, a lot of times those games are blowouts, right? And oh gosh. But we have so many close games, so many tight teams. We don't know who's going to win. I think it's awesome. And I don't think it's talked about enough. I think people talk about too much. Oh, God, I can't stand anymore talk about who should have made it over SMU and Indiana. Let's talk about who's here and what's ahead. And I challenge you. Go to sportsoddeshistory.com. Find me a tighter set of teams when there's 8 teams left. And we'll call you out in the next podcast. Okay? We'll do that. So have fun with that. I love it. The most wide open tournament in the history of organized sports. I dare you to find something better. All right, so let's get on about the Sugar Bowl. We got Georgia, Notre Dame, Georgia, January 1st, 8:45 p.m. New Orleans. We could complain about, the seeding, and we should have been seeded higher than Penn State. We could be playing Boise State and have a double-digit, point spread. But let's just embrace this game. We've got a monkey to get off her back. We talked about it with the major bowl drought, whether or not you count the Indiana game as breaking that or not. Got a monkey off her back. And it's not Notre Dame versus SEC. Because did you know Notre Dame has actually won 4 of their last 6 versus the SEC? We had the A&M game this year. We had South Carolina in the Gator Bowl. Lost to Bama and Georgia, but beat Vanderbilt and LSU. No, it's not about Notre Dame versus SEC. It's about Notre Dame versus SEC elites. And let's say it. Alabama and Georgia and the titles they've won. We're 0-4 versus those 2 teams going back 11 years. The Bama ones have not been close. The Georgia ones have been close, but that's also really before Georgia took off and won their back-to-back championships in dominating season-long fashion. It's a great chance. It's a great opportunity. And it's going to be fun. I really think it's going to be fun. So as I break down the quick kind of tail of the tape, injuries have become a really important storyline. On the Georgia first, right, you should know they'll be without their quarterback Carson Beck. Came into the year as a top NFL prospect. That kind of faded as their offense hasn't quite clicked as much as they've thought. But he's injured. He got knocked out. He's out for the rest of the playoffs. Gunnar Stockton steps in. He stepped in and helped kind of usher Georgia to the SEC title game win over Texas. But he's a sophomore. This is his first start ever. We expect more of a running kind of style. And we'll break that down more. But that's a big what if. Unfortunately, Notre Dame has a counter. And maybe it's just as big, if not bigger. They lose their big man, Riley Mills, in the middle. He's out for the rest of the playoffs too. And gosh, isn't that a position that you don't, against an SEC team that pounds the ball like Georgia with their big offensive linemen, missing a big D tackle like that, a leader on the defense, Gabriel Rubio's next man up, but then who's a Rubio, who's replacing the Rubio that was the backup. God, it's tough. It's a really hard one, and I'll talk a little bit more what I think is key to that preview. Notre Dame might be getting their star freshman linebacker Kingston Vialama Asa. Charles Jagasaw, right? Their O tackle going into the year. He's back too. He might be used at guard. They have some other injuries along the line. But man, this is an interesting game with two key players, one on each team that are out. So my keys, we'll start with when Notre Dame has the ball. It's all about early downs. Now, early downs, first and second downs, expected points added on the year actually favors Notre Dame. The Irish are 22nd in the country, and early down EPA, the Bulldogs are only 46th. But some stats from that SEC title game, it made it hard for Texas to really kind of convert. 12 of the 14 plays inside their Georgia 25 were behind the chains. That means they were getting pushed back on the early downs. The average distance of third downs was 11.6. And Texas only averaged 2.52 yards per rush. That's got to scare Notre Dame. Everything they do will be through the running game. That's got to scare. Is this Georgia team focused now? Did they screw around a little bit during the year? My counter to that is Georgia has struggled with mobile quarterbacks. Is this the Riley Leonard game? Against Georgia Tech and Haynes King threw for 26 for 36, 303 yards, 2 touchdowns in the air, 24 carries, 110 yards, and 3 touchdowns on the ground. In the Alabama game, that was a great shootout back and forth. Jalen Milroe, 27 for 33, 374 yards, 2 TDs and a pick, 16 carries, 117 yards, and 2 TDs on the ground. In the other game that Georgia lost, the Mississippi game, Jackson Dart had 8 carries and 50 yards. They're susceptible to mobile quarterbacks. And sure, Georgia's had 3.5 weeks off. But is that enough to really change how they handle Riley Leonard? Oh my God, is he critical for this game, especially on early downs? Because we know Notre Dame third and long, that's not where we want to be. So don't spend your time watching what happens on this 3rd and 8 play, 3rd and 12 play when, that's not going to work out for us usually. Focus, get locked in on first down. And can Notre Dame, what's the stat? Success rate, right? Can they stay ahead of the sticks? Notre Dame's been an explosive run team. It's going to be harder to be explosive against Georgia, I think, and their athletes, right? The Jeremiah Love 98-yard touchdown maybe is a 30-yard run against Georgia, and that's a big difference. And so for all of the explosives, Notre Dame has not been as consistent of a success rate team on the ground. I think Riley Leonard comes up big. My comparable is the Texas A&M game. Riley was breaking off lots of runs. We saw Riley at Duke last year break off runs against Notre Dame, break off huge runs against Clemson, top-level defenses. He's big. He's fast. It's actually why, noted guest of the pod, Mike, shared in the text chain. When he shared about it, that Riley was hurt and not playing, I was actually worried it was Riley Leonard because he's become such an ace for us on the offensive line. In the offense. So that's key. Now let's go when Georgia has the ball. I mean, who knows? What huge adjustments, right? What's the Georgia offense going to look like preparing with Gunnar Stockton? What's Notre Dame's defense counter going to be without Mills? So I don't know. I throw the stats out the window here. Both units are really strong. Which team has a better coordinator? Which team can make the best adjustment? Notre Dame, we love Al Golden. 3 years now. This defense has been stout. Throw in the next man up kind of culture. We honestly navigated the loss of Benjamin Morrison pretty well. Howard Cross was out. Injuries to linebackers. We got depth. I think Golden is going to have the counterpunches. Georgia's offensive coordinator, Mike Bobo, noted Georgia quarterback from the 90s. He was head coach at Colorado State for a bit. He, bounced around. He's his second year being the offensive coordinator. Eh, Georgia fans haven't loved what they've seen from him this year. I put my faith in Golden. I would. And so I think that's the big difference here on that side of the ball. On special teams, I still am waiting for more fake field goals, more punts, more fake punts from Notre Dame. Their special teams unit, I think that's a plus that not a lot of teams can prep for. Maybe Kirby will have him prepped. Kirby himself likes to do some special teams fakes from last playoff games we've seen. But the field goal advantage still for Georgia. I mean, good thing for Mitch Jeter and Notre Dame, right? Finally connected on a couple against Indiana. But, UGA's game, 20 for 22 on the year. If it comes down to big kicks, not a great sign for ND. So we're kind of balanced. You can see I'm trying to find the points for Notre Dame. Overall, besides this offense and defense, a couple other points is, first, is this a Stars Matter game? I used that. I said it was a 4-star versus 3-star game, Notre Dame versus Indiana. This is a 5-star versus 4-star game. These teams have the same amount of 4 stars. Georgia has a lot more 5 stars. Georgia has 14 5-stars in their roster. Notre Dame has 1. Maybe it doesn't matriculate. Maybe this is like freshman wide receivers that haven't yet broken through with Georgia yet. I don't know, but, how much does that make a difference? That could be an edge. I can't say it's not an edge. It's an edge versus Indiana, but it's not an edge here. So can Notre Dame mitigate that? I talk about coordinator, but what about head coach? Kirby Smart and his 102-18 record and his 2 national titles. Marcus Freeman, he's still proven himself. We haven't really had to see him sweat an in-game, big-time matchup. Edge has to go to Kirby Smart there. So, gosh, this is tough. Do you go with the coordinator matchup you like or the head coach matchup you like? At this point, I think the head coach's work is largely done. Culture's built. Culture's there. Sure, some adjustments can be made. I think the coordinator matchup is key, and I think Al Golden's gonna outsmart Mike Bobo. And I think the mobile quarterback piece is key. I think Riley Leonard, I put him down for 100 yards and 2 TDs. And I think, I haven't talked about this, the down year for the SEC is key. I think you saw Tennessee get whooped by Ohio State. They've talked about it all year with how down the SEC is. I think Notre Dame pulls this one out. I got them 21, Notre Dame 21. I got Georgia 16. And a heck of a fun matchup. So let's go. I'm riding the Irish. I'm riding the culture. Maybe I'm too caught up in Here Comes the Irish. But let's enjoy this game. My kids go back to school that Thursday the 2nd. God, I wish it was an earlier game. But we'll be up. We'll be up watching. My 7-year-old and 4-year-old got a whole bunch of new Notre Dame gear they'll be repping. I got a new hat. The word's out. Wear your best. And go Irish. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. I won't talk to you before the new year is out. Have an incredible end to your year. We're still growing this thing. 39 episodes in. Please, your favorite Irish fan, your favorite fellow Notre Dame alum, whoever, share this episode. I'd love more feedback. Please rate it. Please review it. And again, thanks. Have a great end of your year. Take care.